Welcome to Vocabulary Week 4 for 7th grade Language Arts. A reminder for this week, we don't have school on Friday because of the holiday. It's a teacher work day, so your assessment will be on Thursday instead. Don't forget to take notes in your journal and make sure that you have those ready on Monday when we go over these words and grammar practice in class. Your first word this week is bewilderedly, and this means to do something in a confused or perplexed way. For example, after running into the closed window, the bird flew away bewilderedly. If you've ever seen a bird fly into a window, sometimes it kind of freaks them out and shocks them and they get a little confused and disoriented. In the photos you have a little baby who looks kind of surprised and confused, and a woman with a bunch of question marks over her head, showing that she's confused or has questions about something. And then in the bottom center, you have a dog who's perplexed because he sees part of a dog but can't figure out where the rest of it is going. Your next word for the week is composition. Composition is an organization of thoughts or ideas, or sometimes it can also be a short written piece that is similar to an essay. So for example, a lot of people at school use composition books. And you write those composition books in your you write your compositions in your composition book. So here's a picture of a composition book on the left there. And you'll notice that there's also a piece of art, and it's actually titled Composition Number 57 because works of art and music can also be considered composition. Now in our bottom photo there, you'll see a young boy who looks like he's trying to organize his thoughts or his ideas. He's trying to get them composed or create a composition in his mind. Your next word this week is conformity. Conformity is the act of trying to fit in. So for example, in middle school, conformity is common because most teenagers don't want to seem strange or different from their peers. A lot of people give in to peer pressure, right? So on the right there, we have a photo of some marbles, and all of the marbles are kind of conforming to one another, except this one blue one in the middle. It's unique from the others. In this poster, it's kind of funny. It says conformity. When people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other. You have a picture of a bunch of zebras, and they are showing conformity because they all kind of conform to each other's looks. Your next word is grimace. Grimace is a facial expression that shows discomfort, pain, or disgust. So for example, the boy grimaced as the doctor stitched his wound. So you can see from the three faces here, the man and the monkey and the little girl, everybody looks like they're uncomfortable or in pain or just sort of not feeling great about the situation that they're in. They're showing us what a grimace is. Next we have the word hearing. Now a lot of times when you hear that word, you might think about ears and sound and listening. But in this case, we're talking about the preliminary examination in a criminal procedure. So if you commit a crime, you have what's called a hearing. You go before a jury or a judge and you kind of state your case, and the judge or jury decides whether or not they should proceed forth with assigning some sort of consequence for your actions. So for example, at the hearing, the judge would decide whether or not to press charges. The next word is liable. Liable means responsible or exposed or sheltered from responsibility. So for example, if you borrow a book from the library, you're liable or responsible for any damage done to it. Now on the left there, you see a photo that's from the BP oil spill. If you don't remember, BP is an oil company, and they were drilling and they had a major problem where there were some explosions and some major oil leaks into the ocean. Caused a lot of very sick animals and made people very upset, right? So they were liable for the damages that they caused to animals and to people's property because of the oil that was spilled into the ocean. Now, in that middle photo, we have a bull, and you can see that he's in a shop that has some plates, and there's a sign that says, "You break it, you buy it." And that reminds us of that old saying, like a bull in a china shop. So the bull, if he moves and he breaks things, he's responsible or liable for taking care of them. And on the right, we have 4 people that are trying not to take responsibility, but it seems like they might be liable for something, and they're trying to kind of point out some other people and blame it on them. Next up, we have scarce. Some people will also pronounce it as scarce. This means absent or rare. For example, food was scarce for the people stranded on the island. So in our first photo, you have what's looks like a pink dolphin, and it's actually an albino dolphin. Now, if you don't know, albino is a condition where there's a lack of color or pigment in the skin and in the eyes. So when dolphins are albinos, they turn kind of a pinkish color as opposed to a really whitish or pale gray. In the photo on the right shows what looks like kind of a desert, and you can tell by the way that the ground is all kind of crackly, and with the woman with the big jar on her head that maybe water is scarce in that area. Now next up we have static, and static means unmoving or changing, standing still. So in this case it's an adjective, it's a describing word, right? So for example, we were caught in the static traffic, and I knew we were going to be late. So some of our examples here, we have a picture of a statue, and it's static because it's going to remain in the same place. The picture on the far right there has static from a TV screen, and that just means that the picture's not changing, right? That's why we call that picture static. In the middle, we have 2 cows, possibly a mother or father cow and a baby cow. And they look pretty similar, so you might say that the appearance of that cow will be static, that it will stay the same as it gets older. Next up, we have tension, and tension is stress or opposition between individuals or groups. So for example, after Debbie found out Eric had lied to her, there was a lot of tension between them. So we sometimes think of tension as the stress we feel when we're overwhelmed by something. Or you might think that if you're having a disagreement, like the 2 children in the photo on the right, there might be some tension between people. Our next word is vague. Vague means not clearly expressed or imprecise. So for example, my teacher's lessons were often vague, so my classmates and I were usually confused. So on the left we have a sign that we would describe as vague because it doesn't give directions or an address, it just tells us that there's a garage sale in an alley. And we know from living in Renton, that's near Seattle, that there are lots of alleys around. So if you're not specific, if you are vague, people may not know where your garage sale is. Now, in the middle there, we have kind of a funny picture, and I think it was posted probably on a website called Reddit, where people like to post funny things. And it has a girl with a funny face, and it says, "Vague Facebook status. I don't want to talk about it." Sometimes our friends, when they want some attention or they want people to check in and see how they're doing, they'll post kind of funny, vague statuses, right? "I'm so mad," or "I don't want to talk about it," or "I can't believe I trusted that person." And that just means that they're not giving direct information, so we don't really know what the problem is, right? And lastly, in this photo, it's showing vague, or sort of a vague image, because we can't really tell what's in the photo. It's kind of unclear to us. It looks like it might be in a busy city, but we don't know exactly what's going on. So for your grammar this week, we're going to be looking at verbs. And a verb is a word showing action, occurrence, or existence. Now you've probably talked about verbs before, but there are 2 types of verbs that we really want to focus on this week. So the first type is what's called a transitive verb. And transitive verbs are just action verbs, but they're special because they have to have someone or something that is receiving the action, right? And we call that someone or something an object. So for example, the boy threw the ball. In this case, the boy is throwing, which is an action, and he's throwing a ball. The ball is receiving that throw, right? You can also say the boy caught the ball. And again, that's an action, catching, and the ball is being caught, so it's receiving that action, right? Now our second type of verb is called a to be verb. Now these are really simple verbs that explain existence or a state of being. These can be kind of tricky to remember, but if you keep in mind that there are 8, that might help you remember the to be verbs as well. So the 8 forms are be, is, am, are, was, were, been, and being. So for example, we have Vlad is in the house, and that tells us his location where he is existing, right? Next, we have Sophia was sad yesterday. So Sophia is in a state of sadness. It means that she's feeling sad. She's in a position of not feeling happy, right? So let's do a little bit of practice because those are kind of strange. Here are 6 sentences, and what I want you to do is pause the video for a minute and see if you can find the verb in each sentence. Then I want you to decide whether the verb is a transitive or a to be verb. Now, keep in mind, in that last sentence, there are actually 2 verbs, so you need to look closely and decide whether those 2 verbs are transitive or to be verbs. Now, once you've figured that out and written those down, we can talk about what we found out and what those verbs are. So here's the answers to that previous questions about the verbs in the sentences. So in the first sentence, my friend wrote a story. The verb wrote is a transitive verb, and the recipient of that action is a story. Next up, we have her mom is mad. It's a to be verb because it's explaining that her mom is in a state of anger, right? Our next sentence, Bobby high-fived Matt. High-fived is a transitive verb because Matt is receiving the high five from Bobby. Next we have Jennifer and I were at the movies yesterday. Now that's a to be verb because it's telling the location that we were existing yesterday, the situation that we were in. Next we have Tyler and Andy will be at the house. Now will be is a future tense, but it still contains be, which tells us of course that it's a to be verb. It's telling you where they are going to be, what situation they will be in next. Okay? And in that last sentence with our 2 verbs, told and sang, they're actually both transitive because you're telling jokes, so your first object there is jokes, and sang songs, so your second object is songs. I hope that helped kind of break things down for you. Remember to ask your language arts teacher if you have any questions, and be ready to practice these types of verbs on Monday and to go over the vocabulary. Finally, a quick reminder, your vocab quiz will also be on Thursday next week because you do not have school on Friday. Good luck. Have a great week.